Reading from Bhagavad Gita as it is, chapter 9, the most confidential knowledge. Text number 2. Raja Vidya, Raja Guhyam, Raja Vidya, Raja Guhyam, Pavitram, Idam, Uttamam, Pavitram, Idam, Uttamam, Pratyaksha, Avagamam, Dharmyam, Pratyaksha, Avagamam, Dharmyam, Susukham, Kartum, Avyayam, Susukham, Kartum, Avyayam, Raja Vidya, Raja Guhyam, Pavitram, Idam, Uttamam, Pratyaksha, Avagamam, Dharmyam, Susukham kartum avyayam. Raja Vidya Raja Guhyam. Pavitram idam uttamam. Pratyaksha Vagamam Susukham kartum avyayam. Raja Vidya Raja Guhyam. Pavitram idam uttamam. Pratyaksha Vagamam Dharmyam. Susukham kartum avyayam. Raja Vidya Raja Guhyam.
Pavitram idam uttamam. Pratyaksha Vagamam Dharmyam. Susukham kartum avyayam. Raja Vidya Raja Guhyam. Pavitram idam uttamam. Pratyaksha Vagamam Dharmyam. Susukham kartum avyayam.
Raja Vidya Raja Guhyam. Pavitram idam uttamam. Pratyaksha Vagamam Dharmyam. Susukham kartum avyayam. Raja Vidya Raja Guhyam. Pavitramidam uttamam. Pratyaksha Vagamam Dharmyam. Susukham kartum avyayam. Raja Vidya Raja Guhyam. Pavitram idam uttamam. Pratyaksha Vagamam Dharmyam. Susukham kartum avyayam. The purport is longer, so I'll go to the word meaning. Raja Vidya, the king of education. Raja Guhyam, the king of confidential knowledge. Pavitram, the purest. Idam, this. Uttamam, transcendental. Pratyaksha, directly experienced. Avagamam,
understood dharmyam, the principle of religion, susukham, very happy, kartum, to execute, avyayam, everlasting. Translation and purport by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada. Translation. This knowledge is the king of education, the most secret of all secrets. It is the purest knowledge, and because it gives direct perception of the self by realization. It is the perfection of religion. It is everlasting and it is joyfully performed. Translation with repetition. This knowledge is the king of education, the most secret of all secrets. It is the purest knowledge. And because it gives direct perception of the self by realization. It is the perfection of religion. It is everlasting. And it is joyfully performed. Purport by Srila Prabhupada. Yes. This chapter of Bhagavad Gita is called the King of Education because it is the essence of all doctrines and philosophies explained before. There are 7 principal philosophers in India: Gautama, Kannada, Kapila, Yajnavalkya, Shandilya, Vaishwanara, and finally Vyasadeva, the author of the Vedanta Sutra. So there is no dearth of knowledge in the field of philosophy or transcendental knowledge. Now the Lord says that this 9th chapter is the king of all such knowledge, the essence of all knowledge that can be derived from the study of the Vedas and different kinds of philosophy. It is the most confidential because confidential or transcendental knowledge involves understanding the difference between the soul and the body. And the king of all confidential knowledge culminates in devotional service. Generally, people are not educated in this confidential knowledge. They're educated in external knowledge. As far as ordinary education is concerned, people are involved with so many departments: politics, sociology, physics, chemistry, mathematics, astronomy, engineering, etc. There are so many departments of knowledge all over the world and many huge universities, but there is unfortunately no university or educational institution where the science of the spirit soul is instructed. Yet the soul is the most important part of this body. Without the presence of the soul, the body has no value. Still, people are placing great stress on the bodily necessities of life, not caring for the vital soul. The Bhagavad Gita, especially from the 2nd chapter on, stresses the importance of the soul. In the very beginning, the Lord says that this body is perishable and that the soul is not perishable. That is a confidential part of knowledge. Simply knowing that spirit soul is different from this body and that its nature is immutable, indestructible, and eternal. But that gives no positive information about the soul. Sometimes people are under the impression that the soul is different from the body and that when the body is finished or one is liberated from the body, the soul remains in the void and becomes impersonal. But actually, that is not the fact. How can the soul, which is so active within this body, be inactive after being liberated from the body? It is always active. If it is eternal, then it is eternally active. And its activities in the spiritual kingdom are the most confidential part of spiritual knowledge. These activities of the spirit soul are therefore indicated here as constituting the king of all knowledge, the most confidential part of all knowledge. This knowledge is the purest form of all activities, as is explained in Vedic literature. In the Padma Purana, man's sinful activities have been analyzed and are shown to be the results of sin after sin. Those who are engaged in fruitive activities are entangled in different stages and forms of sinful reactions. For instance, when the seed of a particular tree is sown, the tree does not appear immediately to grow. It takes some time. It is first a small sprouting plant, then it assumes the form of a tree, then it flowers, bears fruit, and when it is complete, the flowers and fruits are enjoyed by persons who have sown the seed of the tree. Similarly, a man performs a sinful act, And like a seed, it takes time to fructify. There are different stages. A sinful action may have already stopped within the individual, but the results of the fruits of that sinful action are still enjoyed. There are sins which are still in the form of a seed, and there are others which are already fructified and are giving us fruit, which we are enjoying as distress and pain, as explained in the 20th verse of the 7th chapter. A person who has completely ended the reactions of all sinful activities and who is fully engaged in pious activities, being freed from the duality of this material world, becomes engaged in devotional service to the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Krishna. In other words, those who are actually engaged in the devotional service of the Supreme Lord are already freed from all reactions. For those who are engaged in the devotional service of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, all sinful reactions, whether fructified in the stalk or in the form of a seed, gradually vanish. Therefore, the purifying potency of devotional service is very strong, and it is called Pavitram Uttamam, the purest. Uttamam means transcendental. Tamas means this material world or darkness, and Uttamam means that which is transcendental to material activities. Devotional activities are never to be considered material, although sometimes it appears that devotees are engaged just like ordinary men. One who can see and is familiar with devotional service, however, will know that they are not material activities. They are all spiritual and devotional, uncontaminated by the material modes of nature. It is said that the execution of devotional service is so perfect that one can perceive the results directly. This direct result is actually perceived, and we have practical experience that any person who is chanting the holy names of Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, in course of time feels some transcendental pleasure and very quickly becomes purified of all material contamination. This is actually seen. Furthermore, if one engages not only in hearing, but in trying to broadcast the message of devotional activities as well, or if he engages himself in helping the missionary activities of Krishna consciousness, he gradually feels spiritual progress. This advancement in spiritual life does not depend on any kind of previous education or qualification. The method itself is so pure that by simply engaging in it, one becomes pure. In the Vedanta Sutra, this is also described in the following words: Prakashash cha karmani abhyasat. Devotional service is so potent that simply by engaging in the activities of devotional service, one becomes enlightened without a doubt. Narada, who happened to be the son of a maid servant, had no education, nor was he born into a high family. But when his mother was engaged in serving great devotees, Narada also became engaged, and sometimes, in the absence of his mother, he would serve the great devotees himself. Narada personally says, once only by their permission, I took the remnants of their food, and by so doing, all my sins were at once eradicated. Thus, being engaged, I became purified in heart, and that at that time, the very nature of the transcendentalist became attractive to me. Narada tells his disciple Vyasadeva that in a previous life he was engaged as a boy servant of purified devotees during 4 months of their stay, and that he was intimately associating with them. Sometimes those sages left remnants of food on their dishes, and the boy who would wash their dishes wanted to taste the remnants. So he asked the great devotees whether he could eat them, and they gave their permission. Narada then ate those remnants and consequently became freed from all sinful reactions. As he went on eating, he gradually became as pure-hearted as the sages, and he gradually developed the same taste. The great devotees relished the taste of unceasing devotional service of the Lord, hearing, chanting, etc. And by developing the same taste, Narada wanted also to hear and chant the glories of the Lord. Thus, by associating with the sages, he developed a great desire for devotional service. Therefore, he quotes from the Vedanta Sutra, Prakashashta Karmani Abhyasat. If one is engaged simply in the acts of devotional service, everything is revealed to him automatically, and he can understand. This is called Prakasha, directly perceived. Narada was actually a son of a maid servant. He had no opportunity to go to school. He was simply assisting his mother, and fortunately, his mother rendered some service to the devotees. The child Narada also got the opportunity and simply by association achieved the highest goal of all religions, devotional service. In the Srimad Bhagavatam, it is said that religious people generally do not know that the highest perfection of religion is the attainment of the stage of devotional service. Generally, Vedic knowledge is required for the understanding of the path of self-realization. But here, although he was not educated in the Vedic principle, Narada acquired the highest results of Vedic study. This process is so potent that even without performing religious process regularly, one can be raised to the highest perfection. How is this possible? This is also confirmed in the Vedic literature. Acharya one Purusho Veda, one who is in association with great acharyas, even if he is not educated or has not studied the Vedas, can become familiar with all the knowledge necessary for realization. The process of devotional service is a very happy one. Why? Devotional service consists of Shravanam, Kirtanam, Vishnu. So one can simply hear the chanting of the glories of the Lord or can attend philosophical lectures on transcendental knowledge given by authorized acharyas. Simply by sitting, one can learn, then one can eat the remnants of the food offered to God, nice palatable dishes. In every state, devotional service is joyful. One can execute devotional service even in the midst, in the most poverty-stricken condition. The Lord says, Patram Pushpam Phalam. He is ready to accept from the devotee any kind of offering, never mind what, even a leaf, a flower, a bit of fruit, or a little water, which are all available in every part of the world, can be offered by any person, regardless of social position, and will be accepted if offered with love. There are many instances in history. Simply by tasting the tulsi leaves offered to the lotus feet of the Lord, great sages like Sanat Kumara became great devotees. Therefore, the devotional process is very nice and it can be executed in a happy mood. God accepts only the love with which things are offered to Him. It is said here that this devotional service is eternally existing. It is not as the Mayavadi philosophers claim. They sometimes take to so-called devotional service, and as long as they are not liberated, they continue the devotional service. But at the end, when they become liberated, they become one with God. Such temporary time-serving devotional service is not accepted as pure devotional service. Actual devotional service continues even after liberation. When the devotee goes to the spiritual planet in the kingdom of God, he is also engaged there in serving the Supreme Lord. He does not try to become one with the Supreme Lord. As it will be seen, actual devotional service begins after liberation. So in Bhagavad Gita, it is said, Brahma Bhuta. After being liberated or being situated in the Brahman position, one's devotional service begins. By executing devotional service, one can understand the Supreme Lord. No one can understand the Supreme Personality of Godhead by executing Karma Yoga, Jnana, or Ashtanga Yoga, or any other yoga independently. Without coming to the stage of devotional service, one cannot understand what is the personality of Godhead. In the Srimad Bhagavatam, it is also confirmed that when one becomes purified by executing the process of devotional service, especially by hearing Srimad Bhagavatam or Bhagavad Gita from realized souls, then he can understand the science of Krishna or the science of God. Evam prasanna manaso bhagavad bhakti yogataha. When one's heart is cleared of all nonsense, then one can understand what God is. Thus, the process of devotional service of Krishna consciousness is the king of all education and the king of all confidential knowledge. It is the purest form of religion and it can be executed joyfully without difficulty. Therefore, one should accept it. Thus ends the Transcendental Bhaktivedanta purport. Om Ajnanativedandasya Jnananjanashalakya Chakshurunmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Guruve Namaha. Namo Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prishtaya Bhutale Srimate Bhaktivedanta Swami Iti Namine. Namaste Saraswate Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschatya Deshatarine. Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shri Vasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare Hare
Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. So it was quite lengthy purpose. So this is chapter 9, also known as the most confidential knowledge. This is in the center of the Bhagavad Gita. So Bhagavad Gita has total 18 chapters, and the Bhagavad Gita can be divided into 3 sections. The first 6 chapters into one section, the middle 6 chapters, and the last 6 chapters. Of all these 6 chapters, the middle 6 chapters are said to be the most important ones. And amongst those middle 6 chapters, the chapters 9 and 10 are considered to be more important. And among them, the 9th chapter is considered even more important. So that's why this chapter is also known as the most confidential knowledge. And this verse is also explaining that this is the second verse of this chapter. And even in the beginning of this verse, Lord was mentioning about what is the significance of this most confidential knowledge, or this knowledge that the Lord is going to give in this chapter is very, very special, because yat gnatva mokshasya ashubhat. So as soon as one acquires this knowledge, which is mentioned in the first verse, that one is relieved from all the miseries of material existence. Now, if we were to search a kind of knowledge, what knowledge can help us solve all miseries of the world? Is a very interesting question. One may go and try to understand, okay, there is some medical science. Maybe I'll go and study some medical science which might help me solve the problems or the miseries. But they can hardly solve one kind of misery. And there is also a specific term, I don't remember the specific term that is used, but it is said that there are good number of patients who go to a hospital because they got treated in the hospital. The reason is that the treatment led to another problem. So they have to go for the cure of a cure. So basically what it means is that even though there is so-called medical science, no one can guarantee that you'll be free from all miseries. Even one may be learning so-called maths, physics, chemistry, sociology, so many different subjects. But no one can guarantee that one will be free from all kinds of miseries. And in Bhagavad Gita, in Chaitanya Charitamrita and other places, it is also mentioned that every living entity has to undergo 3 kinds of miseries. One misery because of the body and the mind. The body is creating trouble in different ways. Sometimes it is not well, sometimes it is causing some pain, sometimes it is tired. And the mind is always agitated with creating its own understanding of what is happening in the world. It is creating its own impressions, its own imaginations in the mind, and creating different kinds of problems. So the body and mind is creating various problems. And then sometimes the problem is coming because of other people. Someone is very harsh, someone is not treating well, someone is not respecting. So in this way, there is trouble because of other living entities around us. It could be people, it could be animals, and so on and so forth. Or it could be because of the natural weather conditions that one is subjected to different kinds of miseries. So in this way, although one may be a rich man, one may be a good scholar, a scientist, no one can say that he is free from these miseries of the material world. Every living entity has to undergo these kinds of miseries. Now, if this is the state of every living entity, then a natural question must come: is there some knowledge which can free me from all these kinds of miseries? If there is a knowledge, what is that knowledge? So, therefore, this verse is describing the previous verse. It was said, "Idam tu te guhyatamam pravakshyami anasuyave jnanam vijnanam sahitam yat gnatva mokshasya ashubhat." So, Lord is explaining the previous verse that jnanam vijnanam. So, this is a very important word. Jnanam means theoretical knowledge, which is present in the book and things like that. And vijnana means the practical knowledge, the practical application of the knowledge. So Bhagavad Gita is not only giving the theoretical knowledge, but it is also telling people
what one should do practically. What is that practical knowledge that we should understand after reading Bhagavad Gita? What is that we are supposed to do? That is also described in Bhagavad Gita. It is not just that simply one can quote all the verses of the Vedic literatures of Bhagavad Gita, and that is sufficient in itself for making one to be the perfect. No. One should also be able to apply what is the knowledge that is given in these books. Otherwise, it is incomplete. Otherwise, one is not freed from all the miseries of the material world. So, in this verse, the Lord is further describing what is the characteristic of that ultimate knowledge. What is that most confidential ultimate knowledge that one can acquire? What is the characteristic of that? And Prabhupada is further explaining what is that most ultimate knowledge that is important for everyone. So the first word that is used is Raja Vidya. So Prabhupada translates the word as the king of education. And Prabhupada very nicely explains that there are different kinds of education. So even in the modern world, we send our children, or we ourselves have undergone various kinds of education. But all these kinds of education that we have studied, none of this can actually solve the most fundamental problems of our lives. Neither they can free us from all the miseries of life. Therefore, someone who is studying different kinds of knowledge, one must question, what is the ultimate knowledge that I can acquire? Someone may study some political science, someone may study some math, some chemistry. That's all right. But what is the highest knowledge that I can acquire? Very rarely people think about this thing. Because it is difficult to understand the highest knowledge, they skip it. They don't bother about it. And Prabhupada mentions about different categories of knowledge. And the most common knowledge that is acquired in the material world is the relative knowledge. Relative knowledge means knowledge which is dependent upon what we perceive. It is not the real fact. It is as what it appears to me. So for example, if there is a yellow paper here, this light will appear yellow. If there is a green paper around the light, it will appear green. So this appearance of the light to me is of one kind of knowledge, but what it is actually is a different kind of knowledge. Similarly, there is this material existence which is present, but we cannot really ascertain who am I, why this world exists, why there is suffering, what is happening here. So to really understand, we can understand that yes, there is a problem, there is a war, there is a famine, there is some sort of disturbance. But what is the real cause of this? Why is the world existing like this at all? To ascertain that, we cannot ascertain just by our mundane understanding. In order to get the real knowledge, we have to go to the real source. Real source means one who is free from all defects. And that's why it is said that the Supreme Lord is free from all defects. Therefore, the knowledge given by him consists of the essence of all the knowledge that one can acquire. So if one ever wants to get the highest knowledge, if one wants to get the knowledge which is free from all defects, one has to find the supreme source. And therefore, this knowledge which is given by the Lord in this chapter is the most beneficial and most ultimate, and it is also the most confidential knowledge. And Prabhupada is also comparing here this knowledge with other philosophies. There are so many different kinds of philosophies given by Gautama, Kanada, Kapila, Yajnavalkya, Sandilya, Vaishwanara. So in this way, there are so many different philosophers who give different aspects of knowledge. But when it comes to the conclusion, the ultimate conclusion of what is the ultimate truth, what is the cause of all causes, if one were to understand this most fundamental question and answer to this question, then it is said most of the philosophies they fall short. They cannot explain this most important or the absolute truth. And therefore, Prabhupada is writing the purport that this chapter is called the king of education because this explains that absolute truth and how one can realize the absolute truth. And therefore, this is known as the king of all education. In this regard, Prabhupada also speaks about this idea that there are so many different educational institutions, but there is no educational institution to talk about the soul. So, this knowledge of understanding one's own self and the ultimate truth is known as Brahma Jignasa. The real essence of all the Vedic knowledge is to understand this one principle called Adhato Brahma Jignasa. To understand the ultimate truth, to understand truth about ourselves, and to understand the cause of all causes. Unfortunately, in the material civilization, in the modern civilization, we have completely forgotten this important principle to know the ultimate source of everything and our own true nature. Because unless and until we do not know our own true nature and the nature of the ultimate source of everything, we will not be able to come out of the miseries of material existence. And therefore, this knowledge is placed great importance in Vedic knowledge, Vedic system. And even in the Vedic system, there are different philosophers who give different interpretations to it. But the interpretation which is given by the Lord Himself, as it is explained in the Bhagavad Gita, makes it easy for us to understand. Otherwise, even though there are so many Vedic literatures, there are so many Upanishads, it is very hard to understand what is the saram, what is the essence of all this knowledge. What is the Vedanta? Anta means the conclusive or the end knowledge of all the Vedas. What is that conclusive knowledge that I should know? So many great philosophers, they have attempted to understand the conclusive understanding of the Vedas, but they still fall short. Therefore, simply by understanding this chapter, under the guidance of a pure devotee, the spiritual master, one can acquire the highest knowledge. And what is that knowledge? Prabhupada is also explaining here. Prabhupada is saying that the knowledge of the soul is said to be confidential knowledge. To understand that the soul is different from the body, and I'm not this body, I'm spirit soul, this fact is explained by the Lord in the very beginning chapter, second chapter itself. The Lord is explaining this principle. So this is said to be confidential knowledge. The more confidential knowledge is the nature of the Lord. Who is the Supreme Lord? If I am spirit soul, who is that Supreme Soul? Who is the Supreme Lord who made me, who made everything? What is his nature? That is explained in the 7th and 8th chapters of Bhagavad Gita. Then in this 9th chapter, it is explained, if you know yourself to be a small spirit soul, and if you understand that the Lord is a supreme living entity, who is full of knowledge, who is the ultimate controller of everything, what are you supposed to do? What is the activity of the soul? This is most confidential knowledge. To understand the activity of the soul is very difficult subject matter. Most of us even do not know that we are spirit souls. Even if we understand, we do not know what are the activities of the spirit souls. So therefore, this part of the Bhagavad Gita is considered very unique, very special, because the Lord is explaining what is the activity of the spirit soul. The spirit soul, in its natural constitutional position, has got specific activities. And when the living entity is performing those activities in the spiritual platform, then when the living entity is performing one's spiritual activities, then the living entity is in one's natural constitutional position. As soon as the living entity is in one's natural constitutional position, one is freed from all the miseries of the material existence. One is in the liberated state. Prabhupada gives a wonderful example. Prabhupada says, imagine you are in a car and you are thinking, this is my car, this is my car. And as soon as you find a small accident, immediately we start crying, we start feeling so sad. Oh, my car got hit. Although you are not the car, but you are feeling so sad. Why? Because I'm identifying myself with the car. I have an attachment with the car. I feel like it is me. It is part of me. There is an attachment to it. And if it is someone else's car, I'm not bothered because I'm not attached to someone else's car. Therefore, even if there's an accident to it, I'm not connected with it. But as soon as it happens to me, my family, my body, anything related to me, I become very, very agitated. So the knowledge means to cut this false attachment. As soon as there is this false attachment is cut, then we become freed. Then although there is trouble to the car, I'm not worried about the car. But as long as I have the attachment to the car, I cannot escape from the trouble of the car. Anything that happens to the car is affecting me. Similarly, in this material world, because we are identifying ourselves with our bodies, anything that happens to our body, we are so worried. And therefore, people are always doing some makeup, some cosmetics, something or the other, some hair dyeing, so as to look better because they think, oh, if my body is not looking good, I am not. They do not realize that you are not this body. If one thinks he's not this body, he's saved from so much of trouble. But if one does not know, he's trying to save something which he cannot save. And therefore, one is in constant anxiety to save the body. So, in this way, people are trying to save the relatives, everything connected with me and mine. We are trying to save them and trying to hope that attachment and that saving of myself, me helping those attachments will actually help me better. But actually, these attachments are never going to satisfy us, or neither they're going to give us real happiness. But rather, they give us a lot of anxiety. And this is what is going on. But no one knows what is the knowledge by which we can cut this sword. What is the sword of knowledge by which we can cut this attachment? And it is mentioned in Srimad Bhagavatam that is the words of the sadhu and shastra can cut this knot of the heart. Knot of the heart means we have created a lot of impressions in our heart as who we are. We have developed a certain fixed kind of thinking about ourselves, about the world, about other people, a very rigid kind of thinking based upon our past experiences. And we impose that on others, and we also feel very uncomfortable when others impose on us. And in this way, the imposition of one living entity's ideas and impressions on the others is going on, with both are wrong or both are incomplete, and they lead to different kinds of fights and conflicts. But when one acquires this real knowledge, then one will have the right knowledge, the factual knowledge, not just the knowledge that is coming from impressions. Therefore, in all our subconscious minds, there are a lot of impressions which are present, which are misguiding us in our life. But by repeated hearing of this knowledge, as mentioned in Srimad Bhagavad Gita, Srimad Bhagavatam, Chaitanya Charitamrita, when we repeatedly hear, our false impressions of the life will vanish. Then our real existence, our real knowledge will come into being. So what is that knowledge that is being explained here? That knowledge that is being explained here is that the devotional service is said to be the most confidential part of the knowledge. What is this devotional service? Devotional service means, Prabhupada is also explaining the later half, that means to do some service to the Lord with love. So it is not easy. If I do not know the another person, how will I ever love that person? And how do I know how to serve that person? If the person is someone who is very, very great and I have no idea about the greatness, how will I serve them? I cannot serve them. So therefore, the Vedic literatures are helping a living entity to understand the glory of the Supreme Lord gradually, very systematically, slowly, helping one to elevate oneself from the gross animal tendencies one has got. So Vedic knowledge is so nice that from the grossest of human beings to the finest of human beings, they have knowledge for everyone. But in Kali Yuga, because the period of duration of life is so short, the environment is not conducive for spiritual realization. The different paths which are mentioned in Vedic literatures, most of them are not practical. They're very, very slow. Different yajnas. So yajna, dana, tapa. So these are general recommendations in the Vedic literatures. Tapaha means like someone is practicing brahmacharya. That is tapasya. Someone is practicing sannyasa. Then he has to follow certain rules and regulations. So he's voluntarily taking up that position and following rules and regulations. That is tapasya. Similarly, someone is in grihastha ashrama, vanaprastha ashrama. In this way, one is learning the different rules and regulations and trying to follow them. That is tapasya. And that helps elevate one in their spiritual life. Similarly, dana, a lot of charity has to be done, especially grihasthas. They have to do charity for so that the brahmacharis, the sannyasis, and the vanaprasthas, especially sannyasis and brahmacharis, they are taken care. So the grihasthas, they have an obligation, duty to do a lot of dana, charity. And yajna means sacrifices. As we see in Mahabharata and many other places, the kings used to donate like billions and millions of gold coins or silver coins, cows. They used to do so much in sacrifice. Sacrifice means not just lighting the fire, but also to give to the brahmanas. So a lot of wealth was consumed in doing sacrifices. There used to be qualified brahmanas who could perform the sacrifices very perfectly. So this is the process of Vedic general process where yajna, dana, tapa, and then there are different kinds of karma kanda to karma yoga to jnana yoga to ashtanga yoga. There is a step-by-step elevation that one is made to follow, and eventually one comes to the highest process of bhakti yoga. So the gradual process of development of one's spiritual progress, which was described in the earlier ages or in the Vedic system, is very, very hard to follow because the duration of time is very less. So the recommended process is that of Nama Sankirtana, is to do Shravanam and Kirtanam. Shravanam and Kirtanam means by hearing the spiritual transcendental message from the lips of a bona fide spiritual master, when we hear, that will transform us much more quickly than any other process. So one is very, very fortunate if one can find, or in fact it is said, Brahmana Brahmite Kona Bhagyavan Jiva, Guru Krishna Prasada Bhai Bhakti Lata Bhij. So how does this devotional service or this devotional understanding comes? It comes by the mercy of the Lord that one finds a spiritual master. So basically the spiritual master is the one who gives the seed of devotional service into our heart. But how do we get a spiritual master? By the mercy of the Supreme Lord. And when does Supreme Lord guide us to a pure devotee? So when we are sincere in our heart, when we really want to understand the Lord, oh, so much suffering in this world, I really want to find what is the ultimate thing I should do. So when the living entity is sincerely looking for the Lord, is sincere in one's heart, then the Lord guides one to the pure devotee, the true spiritual master. So by the Lord's mercy, one receives the blessings, or one finds a pure devotee of the Lord. And when one serves the pure devotee of the Lord, by his blessings, one can understand Krishna. So this is the process of devotional service. That's simply that understanding the Supreme Lord, the ultimate controller of everything. Unfortunately, in this modern world, people think there is no controller beyond me. I will do some savings, I will do some planning, I will do something this, something that, and everything will be fine. There is no idea that there is a supreme controller. So everyone is thinking their life around building some insurance policies, some savings here and there, and all these things will save me from the different kinds of miseries of life. But no, they are another cause of anxiety only for us. The real anxiety free one can become only if one takes shelter of the Supreme Lord. Unless one takes the shelter of the Supreme Lord, one cannot be freed from the different anxieties that we are undergoing. Because in all our hopes, we are having hopes on something which cannot be actually achieved. Because this impermanence of this material world, in which we are hoping we will find permanence, is not going to be possible anytime. Only if we take the shelter of the Supreme All Merciful Lord, by doing service unto Him, we will be freed from all kinds of fears, dualities, and anxieties. Then it is also mentioned here that how one develops that attachment to do service. So when one is doing sinful activities, one cannot understand Krishna. When one is doing illicit sex, intoxication, meat eating, gambling, this kind of sinful activities, then one's intelligence and consciousness does not permit one to understand Krishna. So basically, in the Vedic system, one is trained to refrain from this sinful activities gradually. Okay, you cannot give up meat eating. Okay, you eat once in Amavasya. Oh, you cannot give up that. Okay, there is some concession here. But all the concessions are meant to gradually make one remove all sinful activities. But because it takes time, it is so difficult in Kali Yuga that to go this step-by-step process is very hard. And to then understand Krishna, it will take so many more lifetimes. So the shortcut path is, if one takes shelter of the Supreme Lord, then the Supreme Lord assures that I will take care of all the sinful reactions. You don't have to worry about them. But how do we take shelter of the Lord? So the shelter of the Lord in this age, as recommended by Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, is to chant Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. So as soon as we chant the name of the Lord, as soon as we take shelter of the holy name of the Lord, then we are under the protection of the Lord. We are freed from so many sinful activities that we have done in millions of lifetimes. And simply because of taking shelter of the Lord, Lord blesses us with the ability to understand Him, with the ability to understand, free our heart from contaminations. Our heart is filled with so many contaminations. As long as those contaminations remain, we cannot understand what is the real life, what is the real truth, what is my real duty. Those things will not come into picture. And therefore, everyone is struggling, not knowing what is their duty. Everyone is confused because we have only created so many artificial duties, not the duties of the soul. The duties of the soul are different from the normal societal duties that we all have ascribed for ourselves. And that will become clear as we chant Hare Krishna Mahamantra. So that is the Yuga Dharma. Hare Nama, Hare Nama, Hare Nama eva kevalam, Kalo nasti eva nasti, eva nasti, eva gatiranyatha. So in this age of Kali Yuga, if you want to get free from these different sins or sinful reactions, as it is mentioned here, just like there is a seed which grows into a plant and then grows into a tree, then there are flowers, then there are fruits, then one enjoys the fruit. Similarly, there are so many sinful activities which we have done, which we might be doing, and all of them, some of them will be in the form of seed, which are yet to give the result of the unwanted consequences of that sinful reaction, sinful activity. Or some may be in the fruit stage where I'm suffering because of some past activity which I'm already done in the past. So in this way, there are so many sinful reactions one has to undergo. But by taking shelter of the holy name, one can overcome all these reactions of unlimited sins. And Prabhupada is also saying that this knowledge is uttamam. So this verse says, Raja Vidya, Raja Kuhyam. This knowledge is also very confidential. Confidential means it cannot be understood by everyone. It can be understood only if one has got a specific relationship with the individual. In this case, the Lord in the previous verse says that one who is not envious of him can understand. So in the next verse also we will see Lord explains who cannot understand this knowledge. So although that knowledge is present, it is not understood by everyone unless one is not qualified. And the qualification is that one should not be envious of the Lord and one should become a devotee of the Lord. If one approaches the Lord in the mood of service, then this knowledge will become clear. If one is not approaching the Lord in the mood of service, then this knowledge will not be revealed. This knowledge will remain a secret. One may go on reading, but one will not understand the essence of the knowledge. The essence of the knowledge is only revealed in the mood, in the attitude of service, and by doing service. So it has to be approached in the mood of service, and one should do service for the Lord. Then only this knowledge becomes revealed. Otherwise, this is unknown. People have Bhagavad Gita in their homes, and they would have heard so many podcasts these days, traveling in the trains and flights. But if you ask them, sir, what is the conclusion of this? They will not be able to understand. So this is not a matter of scholarship. This knowledge is not understood by some sort of learning Sanskrit, or some people, especially in modern days, they will think, why don't you read Bhagavad Gita? No, I want to read first Sanskrit. I want to understand the real meaning of Bhagavad Gita myself. We are not qualified to either learn Sanskrit perfectly or learn Bhagavad Gita that way. But the easier way to learn Bhagavad Gita is by doing service, by rendering service to a pure devotee of the Lord. Actually, it is said that if one has implicit faith in as much as one has implicit faith in the Lord, if one has got the same implicit faith in the spiritual master, then this knowledge is revealed in one's heart. Then all the difficult meanings of the Vedic literatures become easily understood by one. If one has the same faith in the Lord, faith in the spiritual master as one has faith in the Lord. And the example, one beautiful example is that of a Brahmana in near Ranganatha Swami temple in Sri Rangam. Lord Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu was traveling in South India. When he was traveling in South India, when he came to Sri Rangam, he saw a Brahmana who was reading Bhagavad Gita upside down, and people were all laughing at him. He was illiterate. He did not know, but because his teacher, his guru, told him you should read Bhagavad Gita every day, he was reading Bhagavad Gita every day. He was trying to read, and he was holding the book in a wrong way, and he was crying. And people used to make fun of him, and they used to go. They used to tease him, and they used to go. But Chaitanya Mahaprabhu saw that he's reading very sincerely. He's trying very sincerely. Therefore, he goes to him and he says, "Why are you crying?" Then he understood that Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is not making fun of him. He's genuinely asking, why is he crying? So he says, although I'm illiterate, I cannot understand, because my spiritual master told me to read, I'm reading it. But whenever I see this book, whenever I see these words, I see Arjuna sitting in the chariot and Krishna driving the chariot. And Arjuna is actually ordering Krishna do this. Krishna is doing this. And he says, oh, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, he is taking orders from Arjuna and he has become a servant of his servant. Oh, how merciful, how great my Lord is. Thinking just this one thing, he used to cry. And seeing this, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu said, yes, you have understood the essence of Bhagavad Gita. Because he was following the words of the spiritual master without fear. Guru Mukha, Guru Mukha Padma Vakya Chitite Koryana Asha. So Guru Mukha Padma Vakya. So one has to take the words of the spiritual master like life and soul. If one is taking the words of the spiritual master very sincerely and attempting to do that, even if one is not qualified, and one should not have any other desire except to follow the instructions of the spiritual master or fulfill the desire of the spiritual master, if one is sincerely doing that, then all perfection is guaranteed. It is not necessary that one has to become a great scholar of Sanskrit or something, some language. No, that's not necessary. This knowledge is not acquired by that means. This knowledge is acquired by the mercy of Guru and Krishna. And this knowledge is so purifying. And what is the example that is given? The example is given that of Narada Muni. Narada Muni was, in his previous life, was born as the son to a maid servant. He even did not know who his father was. But it was a great fortune, opportunity that he could do some devotional service. So there were the sages, Bhaktivedantis, who were traveling during the 4th Chaturmasya. So during the rainy season, they would stay in one place. So when they were traveling in the forest, they came to the place where there was Narada Muni and his mother were staying. So they stayed close to that place. And Narada Muni, in his previous life, as a boy, and his mother was rendering some service to this Bhaktivedantis, to these great devotees. And saying that, Narada Muni also, the small boy would also do some service. And he asked, can I take your remnants, the food stuff that is eaten and left over by these great devotees? And he took that. As soon as he took, the reactions, his heart became purified. And not only it became purified, it became as much purified as the great devotees themselves. And as his heart became so much purified, what was happening? He was developing unsatiated attachment to the devotional activities. That means constant hearing and glorifying of the Lord, which the great devotees were doing, and the same thing was coming into his heart, that he wants to constantly hear and glorify the Lord. A simple act of small devotional service to this great Bhaktivedantis, although no Vedic knowledge, no qualification, no degrees, nothing, but simply executing sincere service to great devotees, that heart got purified and his heart was able to receive this transcendental knowledge. So this knowledge, this devotional service is very, very purifying. So any opportunity to do some service, the pure devotee of the Lord, to their Lordship, Shri Vanitai, Srila Prabhupada, one must utilize. It could be just like bringing some patram, pushpam, phalam, toyam. Anyone can bring fruits. Anyone can bring some leaves, some flower, some water, something for the Lord. And if one brings with love and devotion, the Lord is very, very pleased. Or in any some small capacity, whenever one goes to temple, one must think, oh, is there any way I can serve? Or is there any way I can hear from the devotees? So this process of hearing, so visiting temple means hearing from the devotees. Then we can understand what the deities are, what I should do, what is this goal of the temple, I will understand. Otherwise, like most people, they're not educated in spiritual knowledge, even though they go to temple. But Srila Prabhupada says, temple is a place of spiritual education, where one understands who I am, who is God, what I should do, what I should not do. So the science of knowledge is explained in the temples. So it is very nice that Srila Prabhupada has established these wonderful temples all over the world, which provides opportunities for devotees, for people in general, to associate with devotees, to learn the science of knowledge, and also a place where one can render some service to the Lord and to the pure devotees. If there is no place, we don't know where to execute our services. So this is a very wonderful big purport. It will be difficult for us to cover everything, but just to quickly summarize, so this activity of rendering devotional service is considered to be the highest or the king of all education, and it is also said to be the purest form of religion. And that means if one is able to do this devotional service, that is service to the Lord with pure devotion, and the basic forms of devotional service involves Shravanam, Kirtanam, Vishnu Smaranam. So Shravanam means to hear the glories of the Lord from Bhagavad Gita, Srimad Bhagavatam. Kirtanam means to chant Hare Krishna Mahamantra and the other mantras of the Lord, more specifically Hare Krishna Mahamantra. And Vishnu Smaranam is to remember the Lord always. So these are important devotional activities which one can do. The other devotional activities also involve like helping in the temple activities, doing some seva in any form that also constitutes devotional service. But those devotional services will eventually lead us to develop our taste for chanting and hearing about the Lord. And as we develop our taste for chanting and hearing, our remembrance of the Lord will increase. Remembering the Lord always, not forgetting Him at any point of time, is considered to be the highest principle of religion. And all other principles of religions are meant to support these two principles. So if one has achieved this understanding or this perfection of always remembering the Lord and never forgetting Him, that means he has performed all other activities of the religious method. And that is easily achievable in this age of Kali Yuga simply by chanting Hare Krishna Mahamantra and hearing the message of Bhagavad Gita and Srimad Bhagavatam. In this way, one can attain the highest perfection. And that is being briefly described in this verse. And throughout the entire chapter, more details will be described. I'll stop here and see if there are any questions or comments.